What's poppin', my Zillas? It's me, MT, and welcome back to the Heavy Spoilers Show, y'all. Heavy spoilers ahead for Godzilla Kong, A New Empire, because guess what, y'all? This is gonna be a breakdown of that very same movie. But y'all probably already knew that because your incredibly wise asses clicked on this video. So thanks for stopping by the way. Maybe even consider hitting that dang subscribe button. Or not. We're just happy that you guys took the time to chill with us. But anyways, Godzilla X Kong, A New Empire is of course the follow-up to the massively successful Godzilla vs. Kong from 2021. And with that movie ending with our boy Kong roaming free in the Hollow Earth after being stuck in a big old Monarch science dome on Skull Island for years, this movie starts off in a very similar fashion. And though Kong is super amped about living in a realm tailor-made for someone as big as him, Kong is still very much burdened by the same loneliness that we first saw him express in 2017's Kong Skull Island when we first met him in the year 1973. With this movie being set in the year 2027, it's kinda sad to see Kong still deal with a deep sense of loneliness as a result of being the last Kong from Skull Island. But he's not completely alone due to him apparently adopting Titanus Doug, a fan-favorite crocodile-like titan that director Adam Wingard introduced in Godzilla vs. Kong and made sure to bring back for the sequel, this time as one of Kong's pets, who we can see playfully stealing half of Kong's wart dog haul for himself to eat. And according to the audio descriptions found in Godzilla vs. Kong, Dog is actually a Pheatodon, which is a fictional species of titan that first made their appearance in Peter Jackson's 2005 King Kong film. And even though Kong is an independent great ape who don't need no man, even Kong needs a little help from the dentist every now and then. So a toothache that Kong is experiencing is apparently so bad that it leads him to heading back up from the Hollow Earth to the surface to meet back up with his favorite human, Gia Andrews, played by deaf actress Kaylee Hoddle, who made her first on-screen appearance in 2021's Godzilla vs. Kong, where we learned that Kong had actually saved Gia from a devastating storm on the Iwi and Titan-inhabited Skull Island before Gia was ultimately adopted by Monarch scientist Eileen Andrews. However, even though Gia's first on-screen appearance was in Godzilla vs. Kong, her first ever official Monsterverse appearance was in the pages of the official Godzilla vs. Kong prequel comic, Kingdom Kong, a comic that specifically goes into that tragedy on Skull Island and how a bat-like titan called the Kamazots was responsible for the radical climate shift that led to the evacuation of the Iwi tribe, with the final pages of that comic literally showing us the Iwi tribe being evacuated onto Monarch choppers with Gia amongst them. So it seems like director Adam Wingard decided to retcon all the Iwi being evacuated completely and just have Gia be the last of her people, likely so her and Kong could have a shared trauma that bonds them as interspecies siblings. Along with Gia is her mother Eileen, who is sporting a new blonde pixie cut this time around, a hairstyle that Dr. Andrews actress Rebecca Hall made personally on her own time before she started working on this movie. And since Hall was very adamant about not having to wear an uncomfortable wig for this movie, Adam Wingard decided to have Eileen's new hairstyle match her new elevated position at Monarch, with Eileen having been promoted to head of Kong research at Monarch after working as a senior scientist on Skull Island for years. Now based at a Monarch Hollow Earth access point in Barbados, Dr. Andrews now works under new Monarch director Hampton, played by actress Rachel House. The last Monarch director was of course director Gielerman, played by the late and great Lance Reddick, who died in March 2023 at the age of 60. RIP to a true acting legend. But with Hampton as the new head of Monarch, as far as we know now, it seems like Monarch is now headed by two strong women, as we learned in the Monsterverse TV show Monarch Legacy of Monsters that the deputy director of Monarch is a woman named Verdugo. But whether or not Verdugo is still deputy director of Monarch 10 years later in 2027 is still a mystery. But anyways, despite Eileen's new promotion and rock star status as the world's most proficient Kong whisperer and Godzilla apologist, Eileen is still very much a mom first, and something real weird has been happening with her adoptive daughter Gia. Gia has been experiencing some really strange dreams and visions that have been causing her to repeatedly draw 3 pyramid figures absent-mindedly, while also giving her an urge to visit the Hollow Earth itself. And when Eileen discovers that Gia's crazy girl scribbles was starting to match some strange signals that Monarch had been getting from the Hollow Earth, Eileen immediately sets out to find some answers and some qualifications unqualified help, which is why she flies her ass to Florida in order to meet up with Bernie Hayes, played by actor Brian Tyree Henry for the second time after making his debut as a Titan Conspiracy podcast host in Godzilla vs. Kong. When we catch up with Bernie in this movie, he's doing an ad for Gargantua Insurance, which feels like a reference to Toho's 1966 film, War of the Gargantuas. And when we get a look at Bernie's latest Titan Truth podcast episodes, we can see the third episode on the list is called Planet X on the Horizon, which is only the first reference to the alien Planet X from the classic Godzilla films that was home to the Zillion alien race introduced in 1965's Invasion of Astro Monster. In that film, the Zillions would trick humanity into sending Godzilla and Rodan to their planet under the guise of helping them stop King Ghidorah from destroying them, only to end up mind-controlling all three of these Titans in an attempt to invade planet Earth. Having the words Planet X on the Horizon appear on this list could be director Adam Wingard's way of teasing his personal plans for a Planet X-centric sequel for this film, but that has not been confirmed whatsoever. The fourth episode on this list is called Monster Island, Fact or Fiction, with Monster Island being a popular island home for Titans properly introduced in 1972's Godzilla vs. Gigan after first being teased in a dream sequence in 1969's All Monsters Attack. The eighth episode on this list features the film's only reference to Millie Bobby Brown's Madison Russell character, as Bernie apparently had her on his podcast to discuss her Mothra twin moon base theory following their Godzilla vs. Kong team up in Hong Kong. And while complaining about how Monarch did him dirty after the events of Hong Kong and Godzilla vs. Kong, Bernie also laments about how internet trolls like Ghidorah Stan 64 keep mocking his work, with the 64 in Ghidorah Stan 64 being a reference to King Ghidorah's first appearance in 1964's Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. However, much like I brought up in my ending explained for the new Empire, I think that there is a strong possibility that this Ghidorah Stan 64 hater could be a corrupted Ren Serizawa himself, a man whose fate remained a mystery after the consciousness of Ghidorah fried his brain and body after Ren tried to connect minds with Ghidorah for Apex Cybernetics, which is something that Charlie Day's Newt character did with a kaiju brain in Pacific Rim Uprising, which I don't think is a coincidence. Since both of these franchises are legendary productions, there is a chance that Ren Serizawa's brain was also infected by the consciousness of Ghidorah and now lives amongst humanity as a human being plotting his revenge, but that's just a fun theory I had. After Eileen shows Bernie the three pyramids from Gia's drawings and Monarch's readings, Bernie agrees to head to Monarch with Eileen, just as Godzilla has started to move from his favorite napping spot outside of the Roman Colosseum in Italy, a napping spot Godzilla chose because it felt a lot like his former subaquatic home that was nuked by Dr. Serizawa in Godzilla King of the Monsters. Adam Wingard actually had Godzilla curl up inside of this Colosseum because his cat named Mischief does the same thing when they sleep. Actually, a lot of Adam Wingard's personal life affected a lot of this movie, especially the toothache that causes Kong to head back up to the surface world of the humans. While Adam Wingard was filming the 2011 movie You're Next, Wingard experienced one of the worst toothaches of his life, a toothache that led to him having surgery on his gums in order to alleviate. So, as a response to that particular time in his life, Adam Wingard gave Kong a similar toothache as well. But anyways, a pretty big reference to Guillermo del Toro's Pacific Rim appears briefly when Godzilla wakes up from his nap at the center of the Colosseum. An outline of the Pacific Rim kaiju knife head can be seen on a nearby wall in Rome, right next to a giant graffiti image of a chubby Godzilla eating 2 slices of pizza with sunglasses on without a care in the world. This is the first clear reference to Legendary's Pacific Rim universe that the Monsterverse has ever made, but it's not the only one. A little bit later in the movie, when we see the blueprints for the Beast Power Glove that Monarch ends up gifting to Kong to help him deal with his frostbite injury, is actually straight up the arm of the Jaeger Gypsy Danger from 2013's Pacific Rim. And there were also pretty strong talks in the past at Legendary about their Monsterverse crossing over with their Pacific Rim universe, especially since Pacific Rim 2 director Stephen DeKnight confirmed on Twitter a few years ago that serious consideration about a third Pacific Rim movie teasing a massive crossover with Godzilla happened at Legendary at some point. But anyways, behind Godzilla in this image can be seen a flying saucer, which seems like a nod to the Zillion alien race from 1965's Invasion of Astro Monster. To the right of this UFO can be seen the words "Punch, Punch, Punch," hovering over the drawing of the arm of the sentient robot hero Jet Jaguar, who made his first appearance in 1973's Godzilla vs. Megalon. Punch 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 is a reference to the lyrics of Jet Jaguar's theme that was introduced during that very same film. At the bottom right of this graffiti, the words "Save the Blank" can be seen in between the creepy ass eyes of the monster Hedorah from 1971's Godzilla vs. Hedorah, with the "Save the Blank" likely being a reference to the words "Save the Earth," which is the name of a song that plays repeatedly throughout that movie. And the mysterious bones from 1964's Mothra vs. Godzilla can also be seen under the blue outline of Knifehead to the left of Godzilla, with these massive turtle bones also being called a skeleturtle by hardcore Godzilla fans at that time. But anyways, Godzilla sleeping in this coliseum actually has some pretty strong ties to the overall solar theme that this movie and overall Monsterverse franchise has with both Godzilla and Kong. Historians have theorized that the reason why the Colosseum is called the Colosseum in the first place is because of a giant statue depicting the Roman Emperor Nero as a sun god that was placed not far from the Colosseum itself. This statue became known as the Colossus Solus, and since this Colossus Solus statue was so close to the giant amphitheater, the amphitheater was renamed to the Colosseum after this giant sun deity statue. So, Godzilla sleeping like a cat inside of this Colosseum feels like it was meant to tease Godzilla's inevitable rise as Earth's new solar titan king after he would defeat and absorb the pink solar energies that powered the serpent titan Tiamat, the previous holder of that title. Now, if you watched any of my previous Monsterverse breakdowns on this channel, you'll likely be familiar with how I've been analyzing the colors of the energies of Legendary's Monsterverse and tying those colors to the overall themes at the core of this universe. And ever since Kong's introduction in 2017's Kong Skull Island, Kong has been purposely themed around Earth's yellowy orange sun, with Kong in that movie being a clear metaphor for the wax-melting sun of the Icarus myth. Because of that theme, Kong Skull Island both starts and ends with zoom-ins on eyeballs that turn into solar eclipses, with the solar eclipse that we see in the opening credits of A New Empire being a reused asset from Kong Skull Island. And later on, we learn that the reason why Godzilla switches from glowing blue to glowing pink in this movie is due to Godzilla seeking to power up by absorbing the crazy amounts of solar energy that Tiamat had been absorbing for God knows how long, turning Godzilla from a creature powered from the same blue power source that courses through the Earth of the Hollow Realm to one that is now enhanced by the Earth's solar power, making Godzilla Earth's newest monster god king of the sun. So Godzilla and Kong both becoming sun-themed titans in this film was meant to symbolize their eventual team-up and truce that they would end up forming under the hot Egyptian sun in front of the Sphinx, with the Sphinx itself also being a symbol affiliated with the sun god Hor-Em-Akhet. I mean, even the Titan Queen Mothra is reborn like a phoenix herself in a brilliant yellow solar glow, whereas the Mothra that we were introduced to in King of the Monsters glowed a similar blue to the blue energy source of the Hollow Earth. So even this new Mothra in this movie has become a solar energy being. Like, this sun theme is obviously meant to symbolize how Godzilla, Kong, and Mothra have all agreed to team up to protect humanity's solar-powered realm. So the colors yellow, orange, and pink seem to be directly tied to solar energy power in Legendary's Monsterverse, with pink being added in this movie due to pink being one of Adam Wingard's favorite colors. But anyways, the reason why Godzilla was in Rome in the first place is to finally deal with the long-legged Titanus Scylla, who made their first appearance in 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters when King Ghidorah summoned all of the Titans to him after defeating Godzilla, and would appear later to bow down to Godzilla in fear at the end of that film. But it appears that Scylla's allegiance to Godzilla was disingenuous, which eventually leads Godzilla to covering himself in Scylla's guts in Rome, with that moment being a clear parallel to Kong covering himself in Wart Dog guts at the start of the film. And after Godzilla deals with Scylla, he runs around the planet trying to power himself up by sucking up as much energy as he can, arriving in France to slurp up the energy that they were storing in their nuclear facilities before heading to the Arctic Ocean to find the serpent Tiamat's secret lair, a lair that had been absorbing the radiation from Earth's sun for millennia due to its location on the globe. This serpent titan Tiamat was actually briefly referenced in 2019's Godzilla King of the Monsters when one of the Monarch agents at Monarch's Mothra monitoring station mentions how a titan at Stone Mountain's Outpost 53 was on their way to play pledge their loyalty to King Ghidorah, with Stone Mountain, Georgia being Tiamat's old resting place before navigating to the Arctic. And right after the events of King of the Monsters, Godzilla is actually jumped by Tiamat while Godzilla was just chilling in one of his many resting spots around the world. But Tiamat would of course get his ass beat and chased away by Godzilla, as detailed in the official Godzilla vs. Kong prequel comic, Godzilla Dominion. But to return the favor, Godzilla then jumps Tiamat at his crib and uses his atomic breath to obliterate Tiamat from this plane of existence before moving into Tiamat's house and putting himself in some sort of mini hibernation. But this is not your normal Godzilla nap. Oh no, this is a nap that Godzilla is using to purposely transform and evolve himself. During this nap, the Godzilla Kong novelization reveals that Godzilla straight up duplicated Tiamat's DNA and physically evolved because of that DNA duplication, which is absolutely nuts. But anyways, Kong eventually arrives in Barbados, surprising absolutely everyone at Monarch. But luckily, your boy Trapper is here to give Kong the much needed dental relief that he's been craving, with Trapper's first on-screen appearance of the movie being set to 1977's I Gotcha by Greenflow, which was an introduction that actually convinced Dan Stevens to take the role as Trapper when Adam Wingard pitched the scene to him. Dan Stevens actually based a lot of his performance as Trapper in this movie on Jack Burton from 1986's Big Trouble in Little China, as well as Jack Colton from 1984's Romancing the Stone. After Kong gets his mouth upgraded with some new gear, Dr. Andrews brings Gia, Bernie, Trapper, and some miserable grumpy bitch named Mikhail down through Monarch's Vile Vortex access point into the Hollow Earth. As they travel at insane speeds through these tunnels, swirls of blue and pink lights fly about in their view, symbolizing how blue Hollow Earth energy and pink solar energy appear to travel between these realms somehow, which would make sense considering what Dr. Andrews says at her TED Talk at the beginning of the film about Hollow Earth and the surface world not being two worlds, but one singular Earth with connecting ecosystems. When the Hollow Earth aerial vehicle finally arrives to the Hollow Earth, the gang fly by these giant green crystals, with these green crystals that populate the realm actually being the Hollow Earth's main light sources, which explains why it looks like it's always sunny in Kongadelphia. These green crystals also seem to be tied to the concept of gravity in this universe, with the Iwi tribe native to the Hollow Earth using these crystals to manipulate gravity in order to move super heavy objects around and whatnot. The squad of humans then split up with Kong and head to Monarch Hollow Earth Outpost 1, which got absolutely wrecked by Scar King and his great ape homies, leaving his signature red handprint behind to presumably mark his territory. We got a tease of Scar King's presence within the Hollow Earth in Godzilla vs. Kong when Kong sees one of these red handprints on the door to the Hollow Earth throne room. On the Kong side of things, Kong eventually finds a hole that leads him to the subterranean realm of the Hollow Earth, where he meets Suko pretty much immediately upon arriving. When a smoke-covered Suko approaches Kong, the smoke around him makes his shadow appear bigger and longer than it actually is before that shadow reveals how tiny Suko actually is in comparison to Kong. That moment feels like it could be Adam Wingard teasing a possible link between the small and feisty Suko and the tall and bloodthirsty Scar King, with the Scar King possibly being Suko's biological father, as hinted by the Scar King's multiple partners and babies that we see around his throne room. Actually, Suko's name is never said at any time throughout this movie, and the general public would not really know Suko's name at all if it wasn't for the promotional material and toys for A New Empire. Suko, whose name feels like a slight nod to Kiko, the son of Kong from 1933's Son of Kong, is actually the third mini Kong to appear in a King Kong movie, with Baby Kong from 1986's King Kong Lives being the second. Because of Suko's introduction and crucial involvement in this movie, Godzilla Kong: The New Empire was actually under the working title Son of Kong before the official title was revealed. And even though Wingard isn't going to be directing whatever sequel comes after this movie, it definitely feels like it was him and Legendary's intention on making Suko an essential part of the Kong narrative to come in the future, especially since Suko's name literally means essential or necessary child in Japanese. So we could actually end up seeing Suko taking up the mantle of the King of the Kongs at some point in Legendary's future, because much like we learned with the international tragedy that was Harambe's death, apes don't go poo-poo pee-pee and hoo-hoo-hee-hee forever, man. One day, King Kong will have to go to the big Donkey Kong country in the sky, leaving Diddy Kong here to keep tabs over his Kong dynasty. Which of course then leads us to the Monsterverse movie event, Avengers Kong Dynasty, with Mini Kong the Conqueror. But anyways, immediately after meeting Suko, Suko, Kong is jumped by a bunch of Scar King's loyal Great Ape soldiers, each bearing a red mark on their chest to show their allegiance to their abusive king. At the very end of whooping the asses of all of these overgrown gorilla goons, Kong uses his strong arm and impeccable aiming skills to perfectly bonk a fleeing Great Ape on the head with a rock. This isn't the first time we've seen Kong's incredible rock-throwing skills, as we would see him bonk a giant sea serpent on the head with a perfect long-distance rock throw in 1967's King Kong Escapes. We get another reference to that moment from King Kong Escapes when, not long after Kong forces Suko to lead him to the rest of his people, Kong is forced to fight a sea serpent called a drowned viper when he was caught by surprise while bathing. Don't you hate it when you're taking a shower and a snake approaches you from behind? I thought this was a Hollow Earth, man, not the average American prison. But anyways, this attack by the drowned viper happens around the same time Godzilla is fighting the serpent Tiamat. Another way this movie attempts to sync and parallel the actions of both of these Titan heroes throughout the film. When Kong and Suko finally arrive at the Great Ape's volcanic home of slavery and abuse, Kong immediately goes to help apes being bullied by one of the Scar King's men by kicking some of their asses, showing just how much more compassionate Kong is towards other kaiju like him due to him having been alone for so long and craving any type of Kong connection. So when Kong finally meets people like him and sees that they're being hurt, Kong has no choice but to spring into action to protect them and his overall dream. Adam Wingard purposely did this in order to accentuate just how much Kong is supposed to represent the best qualities of humanity, while the Scar King embodies the worst, most violent, and ruthless parts of humanity. Kong rudely interrupting the workflow of the Scar King's slaves leads Scar King to confront Kong himself. Even though Kong towers over Scar King at 337 feet tall, whereas Scar King stands at a mere 318 feet tall, like some type of Smurf. But to make up for their height difference, the Scar King has luckily wrapped his body with the spine of a warbat, which he uses in combat to beat and slice his enemies, as well as yoink his enemies to him, like Scorpion does to his opponents, with Adam Wingard himself even confirming that he took a lot of inspiration from video games in order to craft his fight scenes. But anyways, after Kong bests the Scar King in a 1v1, Scar King decides to wuss out by using a strange crystal to painfully summon the Frost Titan Shimo from behind a wall of volcanic lava and forces Shimo to blast Kong with her ice breath. But hey, some fun facts about Shimo. Shimo is actually a she, yo, with this female titan's name actually meaning frost in Japanese, which is incredibly fitting considering her frigid power set. A power set that is implied to be responsible for the freezing of King Ghidorah a long time ago, a freezing that we see get undone in Godzilla King of the Monsters. In order to design Shimo, the production referenced the natural looks and movements of polar bears, Komodo dragons, and chameleons. Kong, using the same defense tactic he used against Godzilla in the previous film, tries to use the absorptive qualities of the Godzilla scale on his axe to absorb the energies from this blast, but that decision ends up severely damaging Kong's hands with a nasty case of frostbite, forcing Kong to flee the Scar King's lair and return to the upper levels of the Hollow Earth. And as Kong is trying to evade capture by Scar King's army, Kong leads them into various traps that he built and placed throughout the Hollow Earth, showing just how incredibly smart and tactical Kong has evolved to become over time. When one of Kong's traps fails to activate, however, it's Kong's new little buddy Suko who activates the trap and saves Kong from getting his ass beat, with Suko beating his chest like Kong does in order to symbolize his new loyalty to his new potential savior of the Great Ape race. While this is all happening, Gia eventually helps lead the group of humans to the Hollow Earth Iwi tribe using her special connection with them. And when the group gets close to the settlement, Trapper notices a carving of the Titan Mothra on a nearby wall, a carving that closely matches that of the one Emma and Maddie Russell discovered in China in King of the Monsters, very much implying that the Iwi people might have populated the upper surface of the world with a lot bigger numbers at one point in the past, especially since later on we discover how the Iwi of the Hollow Earth have mastered the manipulation of gravity to move incredibly massive objects with ease, a mastery that seems to imply that the Iwi might have helped the ancient Egyptians build the pyramids themselves, as Iwi culture seems to be heavily pyramid based due to the triangular shape of their crystallized power sources. After Gia's group of humans are surprised by a group of camouflage Iwi, much like how Conrad and Weaver's group of humans were surprised by the Iwi in Kong Skull Island, they lead Gia and her group towards a massive glowing pyramid with a big ass staircase. with the base of that pyramid glowing blue on the left and yellow on the right to symbolize both the hollow Earth and human Earth's main energy sources. Around these pyramids are a bunch of undocumented vile vortexes that could lead anywhere on the surface of the planet Earth, a possible allusion towards a potential plot point in a potential sequel to this movie. At one point during the film, Trapper confronts Bernie about his obsession with chasing internet clout by being the first to film and document life on the hollow Earth for the general public, with Trapper warning him that humanity's tendency to destroy and conquer could completely destroy the Iwi's way of life and radically alter the entire mystical hollow Earth for the worst. I mean, with Apex Cybernetics paving the way in Godzilla vs. Kong, it seems like it's only inevitable that the human forces of the surface world eventually attempt a proper invasion of the hollow Earth for land and radioactive resources. So these vile vortexes around this Iwi tribe could very well be the entry point human parties need in order to catch the Iwi by surprise and wipe them out for their land, much like what happened with the Native Americans when the humans of the East discovered the New World. But anyways, when Gia and the group are led inside of this giant pyramid structure, the Iwi Queen shows them a giant glowing white crystal at the center, with that crystal being the source of the strange dreams Gia's been receiving, as well as the weird readings Monarch has been picking up. Knowing that Scar King's ascent to the surface was inevitable, the Iwi used this crystal in order to summon both Gia and Godzilla to their aid, with this crystal somehow being able to interface with biological brains and manipulate them to action, which is not so different from the Scar King's whiplash crystal that he uses to control Shimo. Like, I honestly bet that there's some type of connection there between these two crystals that might be revealed in a potential sequel. But after the gang learns of this Iwi prophecy, Gia discovers that she is destined to become the Skull Island native that would restore humanity's guardian Queen Mothra to the worlds after she was destroyed in Godzilla King of the Monsters, which Gia does by ascending the giant Iwi pyramid and generating some type of mysterious yellow light that brings Mothra back in the game, just in time to serve as a peacemaker between Godzilla and Kong in Cairo, Egypt, as well as the one to officially assemble the greatest team-up of Sun God Guardians the world has ever seen, with Gia being the representative for humanity atop the Sphinx solar entity. Because, just like I theorized in my Godzilla X Kong trailer breakdown videos, Gia is actually Legendary's version of the Shobijin, who were originally two telepathic twins that served as priestesses for Mothra that made their debut in 1961's Mothra film. Because of their special connection to Mothra, the Shobijin were the only ones capable of communicating Mothra's will to humanity, much like Gia is in this movie. And since the word Shobijin literally means small beauties, it seems like Adam Wingard always intended this fate for Gia when he introduced her in Godzilla vs. Kong, as Gia's name straight up means beautiful, making the young Gia a small beauty. But anyways, after a zero-gravity fight that ultimately failed to stop the Scar King and his forces from accessing one of the vile vortexes above the Iwi's territory, the Titans all emerge in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, to have their final battle as Brazil's Christ the Redeemer statue gets a front row seat. But the only Redeemers here are the Sun God Squad. But after this Sun God Squad managed to free Shimo from Scar King's control, Shimo turns against her master and freezes him solid before Kong ultimately ends up being the one to deliver the shattering killing blow to the Scar King, officially earning his title as King Kong of the Hollow Earth, and starting his new empire with Prince Suko as his adopted son and Shimo as his new pet homie alongside Doug, leaving the door wide open for anything to happen in a sequel. But like I said before, I definitely feel like the Hollow Earth is going to be invaded by humans very, very soon. But anyways, before we wrap up this video, let us go into the different creatures that we actually run into during this movie, starting with the leaf wings that appear at the very beginning of the film to 1963's Welcome to My World by Jim Reeves. We were first introduced to leaf wings in Kong Skull Island as part of the wildlife of Kong's home island. They were actually that predatory bird species that yoinked that Landsat nerd from the gray fox and ripped that motherfucker in half like he was wet toilet paper. Leaf wings have appeared a number of times throughout the Monsterverse, including at the end of Godzilla King of the Monsters right after Godzilla kills King Ghidorah, as well as inside of Monarch Skull Island Biodome in Godzilla vs. Kong. When overseeing the design for the leaf wings for Kong Skull Island, the director of that film, Jordan Vogt Roberts, specifically asked the VFX team to create a fucked up stingray with a bayonet for a face, end quote. And that's exactly what these leaf wings are. But anyways, the creatures that chase Kong at the start of the movie are actually called wart dogs, which are a new Titan species making their debut in this movie. In order to create the movement for these animated creatures, the movie copied the body movements of hyenas, wolves, and African painted dogs. And the design of the wart dogs, according to art director Nick Lloyd, were an amalgamation of several different animal parts. For the claws, they used eagle talons, then hyenas with cataracts for the eyeballs, the hide of diseased water buffalo for the hide, and the scars of sick dogs. And a monster that would absolutely prank the shit out of Kong by mimicking his Kong call is a creature appropriately called a parrot frog, with that moment being the creature's first appearance in Legendary's Monsterverse. A New Empire also features the debut of the electrifying verticine monsters of the Hollow Earth, a group of flying monsters that naturally emit bioelectricity when threatened. The quick-thinking Trapper would utilize these electric birds against the Scar King and Shimo in the third act of the movie. And my favorite monster in this movie is of course the Tree Mimic, mostly because it did us the favor of eating that insufferable, bloodthirsty psychopath of a Monarch pilot that was always clearly going to die first due to him not being on the movie's poster or any of the promo material. Who is this guy? I don't know, so him becoming future Tree Mimic poop was more than fine with me. The Tree Mimic is the newest Monsterverse monster that we see use trees and the natural environment as camouflage, following the Bramble Boar from Monarch Legacy of Monsters, a warthog-looking titan whose skin matches that of natural forest bramble. Then we get another new creature called a Drown Viper that we see when one of them tries to attack and drown Kong, when Kong and Suko were just trying to have a nice relaxing swim as father and kidnapped son. Having Kong fight one of these Drown Vipers feels like another nod to 1967's King Kong Escapes, when Kong fights a giant sea serpent in order to protect a group of humans. And around 49 minutes into the movie, we can actually witness some beastly warbats feasting on some hellhawks as Kong and Suko observe the aerial carnage overhead. A warbat almost got the best of Kong when he first arrived to the Hollow Earth in Godzilla vs. Kong. But since Kong is the HBIC of the HE, Kong ended up ripping off that warbat's head clean off his body and chomping on him a little bit. And not long after that, Kong and his human homies would be attacked by a flock of hellhawks that descended upon them from the roof of the Hollow Earth throne room. But anyways, that is it for this breakdown of Godzilla Kong, the New Empire. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys can follow me at Mastertainment on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, wherever I am on the internet. But most importantly, follow Heavy Spoilers here on YouTube. And when you do, make sure you hit that notification bell to get notifications for every time you upload a video. And hit that subscribe button because it really helps with the channel. But yeah, you guys are amazing for watching. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.